What does your DM wish you knew? This week, I discuss 5 things your DM wishes you knew about what goes on behind the DM screen. Hello players and GMs, I am Reese and welcome to another video by Jetpack7. Before we get started today, I just want to take a moment to be entirely transparent with you all and say that the growth of the channel has been slowing down quite a bit since the success of the archetype ranking videos, so my immediate thought is that I could be doing something better, making videos people want to watch more, making better videos, making more creative videos, stuff like that. So, I want to ask you all to talk to me this week and tell me what brought you to the channel, what has kept you here, or what has stopped you from watching more of my stuff. Be totally honest, be totally frank, you won't hurt my feelings, I promise. I just want some feedback about what I could be doing better to grow this community. And I can't think of anybody better to ask than the community. So let me know, and thank you all so much for helping me out. My schedule's been pretty crazy lately, but I am settling into it and really want to be able to continue creating content you all want to watch. All that aside, I am feeling communicative lately. I want to socialize and talk to people and play D&D and talk about playing D&D. I am usually a GM. In fact, I prefer running games over playing in them for a whole slew of reasons, but the main reason is that I love creating an entertaining game for my players. That said, there are a lot of things I wish I could communicate to them in the moment, and I found that these things are pretty universal for other GMs as well. So today, I'm going to do my best to communicate those things here. So GMs, if any of this stuff relates to you, show this video to your players and I'll do all the talking for you. First and foremost, one of the things I constantly try to let my players know is that I am on your side. There's the stereotype of GMs that they want to beat their players, or they want to kill the PCs, that they enjoy when the players can't defeat their encounters or whatever, and while that may be a funny running joke among my group and many other groups, I think the very large majority of the time, the GM actually wants their players to win. That feeling of fear the players have of party wiping or losing their character for good is only encouraged by the GM because the GM actually wants the players to feel the triumph of overcoming that and winning in the end. Combat aside, I also am constantly telling my players that I will not punish them for taking risks. It may not turn out great for you, that is kind of the definition of taking a risk, but I'm not going to make it even worse because I didn't like that you're testing boundaries or something. I want you all to have fun. And oftentimes, having fun is doing stuff that would never logically be a great choice in real life. But this is a fantasy world with dragons and dungeons, and if you can't take a wild risk in this world without being punished harshly, then I don't think it's a world worth playing in, you know? This isn't real life. You have to be able to get a little crazy, and I personally want my players to take those risks. In fact, when it comes down to it, I've found that I bend the rules in favor of the players more times than drawing a hard line on what is possible or not. Because again, I'm on your side. So have some trust in me that I'm not playing against you, and embrace the chaos of this wonderfully destructive game that we call D&D. And speaking of chaos, another thing I want my players to know is that half this is made up. Unless I am running a super detailed module or an extremely linear campaign, which rarely happens if ever, I am constantly pivoting and improvising new plot points, characters, environments, and encounters. My favorite example of this is something that I feel like happens in nearly every campaign, but when the PCs start just talking to people. GMs know what I'm talking about, but when they start just going around meeting random NPCs and not a single person they ever meet is planned out or even relatively vital to the campaign, but for whatever reason, the players get super attached to one of the NPCs they meet. It's usually someone completely random that the DM absolutely made up in that moment, and the players either just fall in love with that character for no reason, or they think they're super relevant to the campaign. Don't get me wrong, I love when this happens because it allows me to find a way to loop that character into the campaign if the players want that NPC to stick around. But I just want all of my players to know that the vast majority of NPCs you meet are entirely improvised, or originally conceptualized as a name and a single line of descriptive text, like half-elf shopkeep, tall, brown hair, blue eyes, sassy but kind, that kind of stuff. I've honestly gotten in the habit of creating a random NPC at every named location, as well as having a list of randomized NPCs to pull from at any given moment, because my players so often just drag random civilians into their conversations or plot. But sometimes, even then, I have to make them up on the spot because I can just never predict where my players are going to go next. My third point is something I've mentioned on the channel a lot, and another thing I tend to emphasize in my playgroup. This is your campaign, not mine. The party is the protagonist, or the antagonist, depending on how you play, I guess. You're the main character. In terms that I find easier to understand, the player-DM relationship is like a player's relationship with the creators of a video game. When you're playing through a video game, you're not thinking about how you don't want to mess up the world that was created for you to play around in. You want to play through it however you want to play through it, whether that's by abiding by every hint and nudge, or by plowing headfirst through every single rule created. It's the same thing in D&D. You cannot ruin the world I've created because, one, it isn't real. Like I said, this is all made up. And two, my world is your world. My world only exists with your characters in it, and it reacts to your decisions and morphs around your thoughts and your activities. This kind of loops back to the last point, but don't be afraid to bust up whatever plot you think I've created for you, because I can guarantee you that plot is only loosely crafted. I don't have some grand design in mind for every single plot point or character choice. I have a starting point and usually an ending point in mind, with a couple little checkpoints here and there that are very flexible and often get blown up and put somewhere else. I have ideas of what is happening in the background of a campaign, but I don't let myself get too attached to them, because this game isn't about what I've created, it's about the journey the party takes to unravel those strings that I've laid out. The story that spawns from a player-driven campaign will always be better than anything I could meticulously craft in my downtime. Which brings me to my fourth point. Don't be afraid to take the reins. I personally don't have this issue at all in my playgroup, for which I am eternally grateful, but I know some players and other playgroups that are a little hesitant to take the lead on pushing the plot forward. There are a few different reasons for this. Firstly, like I said a moment ago, a player-driven plot is just way better than a DM-driven plot like 999 out of 1,000 times. Multiple brains with party collaboration will always create a more complex, unique, and interesting plot than a single brain working around that little hive mind that you all have created. If a DM is caught saying their players ruined their campaign simply by driving the plot forward, I say that DM has control issues. Letting the players drive the plot forward is a joy and requires some humility from the DM, but ultimately results in a much more vibrant campaign, and one that the players will talk about for years to come. Secondly, it makes the DM's job just easier. When you all take the reins and proactively decide where to go next, it makes it so much easier for the DM to react and have things prepared, because they know where you all are going to go. They know what you all are expecting, and they can then choose to fulfill or subvert those expectations. Tell the DM what you want for your characters through their characters' goals and actions. This will allow the DM to form the narrative around your actions more easily, because they actually know what you want and what you expect. Overall, it creates a more interesting campaign, will be more fun for the players and the GM, and lets you all really create a story that you feel like was impacted by your choices, which, at the end of the day, is just the best kind of campaign in my opinion. And finally, my fifth and final thing I want my players to know, and this one is just kind of a basic human tip, but applied specifically to the DM, it makes it more relevant to this video. Please respect your DM's time. Yes, D&D is a game, and all in all, it is just meant to be a fun time with friends like any other night of socializing, but everyone who plays knows that it is a bit more than that. It's an event, and your DM is the one in charge of scheduling, preparing, and running that event. People DM because they like doing all that stuff, so this isn't a guilt trip at all. The problem arises when the players are 1, consistently late, 2, aren't paying attention during sessions, or 3, aren't playing well with the rest of the party. So, point number 1. Obviously, life happens, and you can't be on time every single session, but please just communicate that to your DM so that they can know ahead of time and pivot their plans in case they had something in mind for your character at the top of the session. Point number 2, put your phone down. Listen to what is being said and pay attention to what is happening in combat so you can be prepared when your turn rolls around. Of course, there are times when we lose focus. That's normal. But if you're constantly losing focus and not noticing when certain things happen, it can get extremely frustrating for a DM to have to repeatedly remind that player of everything they missed. Not to mention, if we are always getting to your turn in combat and you have not thought of what you're going to do, your turn is going to take forever. and it bogs down an already naturally slow combat process, so just pay attention as best you can. And in regards to point number 3, play with the party. Notice that I said before that the party is the protagonist, not you. The whole group is the main character of this show, which means every individual will have their moments to shine and their moments to let others shine. If you are constantly battling the party in their decisions or always going off and doing your own thing, you are detracting from the rest of the party's time and making the sessions all about you, which can be super frustrating for the party but also difficult to deal with as a DM. I never want to shut down roleplay. I never want my player to feel like I'm telling them to stop talking or be quiet and let other people play instead, but sometimes the player is just taking up too much time and no real progress is being made during the session. It's a party game, and when you make it all about you, everyone suffers for it. All 3 of these points contribute to one big thing: DM anxiety. When your players are late, not paying attention, or being destructive or individualistic, it often makes the DM feel insecure about how they are performing as the person who is supposed to keep things on track. It is my job as the DM to make sure you all are having fun, and when the players start to get bored or annoyed or don't show up to sessions on time, it can honestly make me super anxious when running a game. Nobody wants to feel like they're not doing a good job, and when you aren't respectful of your DM's time or effort, it can cause that feeling to creep up no matter how confident they are in their DMing abilities. Basically, be respectful, have fun playing with everyone, and everyone will be happier for it. And that's it for that list. I'm sure there are plenty of other things DMs want to say to their players, so post in the comments your messages to your players, and if I like some of them enough, I may make another video following up on this one in the future using those comments. Also, please remember to let me know what brought you to the channel, what's keeping you around, and what I could do to help you watch more. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around.